One coming in. We're going to give folks a second to trickle in. In the meantime, I'll make another announcement in a little bit. We are recording this session, and so we would love for many of you to be on camera as possible, but understand that if, recording and being on camera is not your thing, then feel free to stay off. Buenas tardes, buenas tardes. We will give it a couple more minutes. Hello, Joe. You're on mute.
Hello there. How are
Hello.
you, Susana? How's
Muy
everybody?
bien. All good,
Joe.
all good. Thank you so much.
Glad to
Thank
hear
you so
that.
much. And we will give it a couple more minutes as people trickle in. I see Angela Cruz has joined us. I will just redo the announcement, and also my super good friend Franklin Reed. Hola, amigo.
Hola.
Hola, hola. So we are recording the session so that we can add it to our HITEC channel. For all those who aren't able to join us in person today, they'll be able to have access to it later. So as the session's being recorded, just wanted to let you know about that. We welcome participants to be on camera. Love the connectivity that provides us, but also understand if you would prefer to stay off camera también. As you know, HITEC Live is full interaction. We love for you to participate at full. We have some room at the end, though, for Q&A if you want to stay for that. Pero with us, I think that we will get started a little bit. For those of you who don't know me, hello. Hola, buenas tardes. Welcome to HITEC Live. My name is Susana Ramirez. I'm the Executive Director of HITEC, and I have the privilege to serve this community in many different regards. One of them is connecting amazing, inspirational executives, such as Ricardo Madan from TEKsystems, and bringing his story to light. It's one of the core values of HITEC, networking. And it's also one of our core values to shine a spotlight and applaud the best successes in our industry. One of them is Ricardo. Now, if you all joined because you thought you were getting some other Ricardo Madan from Miami, because I understand there's like 20 of them there, or if you thought it was going to be that man who the street in Miami is named after, no, pero sí.
No, ese es el abuelito mío.
No, pero sí. Sí, pero no. We have Ricardo, who now is in Virginia, ¿verdad? North Carolina.
North Carolina. Pero cerca.
Exactamente.
Básicamente la misma cosa.
So he kind of left Miami, but continues the legacy that his family brought with them from Cuba. That immigrant, hardworking mindset. And as I said in the beginning, it is really my pleasure to be able to serve this community, to bring to light, shine a spotlight on these types of executives and the organizations that they work for. TEKsystems has been a longstanding HITEC partner. We value the engagement that we have with them. And without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Ricardo, who has an amazing inspirational story to share on superpowers. And just before we do so, I want to say, as we listen to Ricardo's story and as he shares, take a moment to reflect on your own story. Take a moment to write down, of course, the golden nuggets that he will impart to us. But also, I leave you with this. As you listen to Ricardo's story, think about how it resonates and connects with you. One of the key threads of our organization is the thread that binds the network. So we would love to hear from you at the end. What is your superpower? So con eso, Ricardo, amigo mío, por favor.
No, gracias, Susana.
Lead us through your journey so that we can all learn, connect, and grow.
I love it. No, thank you so much for that introduction, Susana. And thank you, Roy, for setting us up here today. And And Susana, like you gave us a little foreshadowing on, we're going to talk about that concept of superpowers for our community here at HITEC. I'll try to connect that a little bit with my story, a little bit with the current state of affairs in our industry in technology. And really, I think the benefit that we're after, hopefully the benefit and the impact to you is just some added perspective, maybe some tangible experience, like we're talking about that thread, like Susana's talking about, applying it to our teams, through our careers, especially right now in these challenging times. These are tough times right now. So that's the intent, that's the goal. So quickly, a little more about me, and yeah, there are a lot of Ricardo Madangs in Miami. We are Cuban American. We are Cuban. And for those of you who are Cuban or no Cubans, there's a lot of creativity in music and culture and cuisine. But when it comes to names, at least in my family, we're not that creative. There's a lot of boys and men that are all Ricardo Madan. I'm the fourth of my line, but there's a couple other lines. My son's the fifth. My father's the third. So sorry, not a lot of originality or creativity, but but a little more about me. So proud first generation Cuban American. I will try to restrain myself from talking too much about myself because, again, for those of you who know Cubans, we have no problems talking about ourselves. That's a superpower to, like, self-promote. But but just some background. Most of the family came here to the United States in the 60s. I was born in Florida, but raised between Miami and Sao Paulo, Brazil. We lived in Brazil for almost 9 years, and that was during my childhood, and it was because of my father's job. So although I don't have Brazilian heritage, I don't claim Brazilian blood, I 100% identify as a wannabe Brazilian during the World Cup and during the Copa America. So during those times, I'm going to speak Portuguese. I'm going to, have my little yellow jersey on. Marcelo de Santis, if you listen to the replay, because I don't see your name, I know you're still celebrating con los pibes, the victory, the Argentine victory, but I'm sorry, I'm still going to root for Brazil in 4 years, Marcelo. So sorry about that. But but personally speaking, just family. I am married. I am married to my precious wife, Lena. We've been married for 23 years. We have two beautiful children, both in college right now. Ricardo, that I mentioned before, with no creative name, but Ricardo, who's a senior, and he's a cybersecurity nerd, and he's a big soccer player too, a big soccer guy. And then our baby girl, Gabriela, who's a freshman, and she's an all-around nerd. She's like a complete end-to-end nerd on a bunch of topics, but in a good way. So Lena and I right now we're empty nesting it. We've got the kids away at school, and we're empty nesting it for the time being. I've been a HITEC member since 2018, and Susana, you highlighted we've been very blessed here at TEKsystems to have this alliance and have this partnership and be part of this beautiful community. Really in earnest since 2016, 2017, but at least I can claim official personal membership since 2018, and I've been very privileged, gang. I've been very privileged, everybody, to continuously be pushed up and pulled up by this community here, this familia here at HITEC. Regarding career path, I'll jump to career path a little bit just for introductory purposes. I've been very blessed to be with TEKsystems for nearly 25 years. This is my only real place that I've worked at since graduating college. And even though I've consulted out to many different customers and companies, and I've gotten a lot of cool diversity in terms of different corporate cultures, this is my only employer for 25 years. But during that time, I've held over a dozen or so different roles. These roles have spanned nearly every facet of the organization. And I could probably break the career up into two parts. I could split it up with the first 10 years really being spent doing deep work across consulting, sales, solution development, recruiting, technical writing, project management, program management, lots of cool different functions and roles. And I could apply, everybody's probably familiar with the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour concept. I could apply that principle and that concept to a bunch of different roles there. That was alive and well. Deep work was alive and well during a host of different domains, and I was very fortunate to have that diversity and experience for the first 10 years. And I'm very grateful that I got to do a lot of that alongside some of the most brilliant software architects, engineers, developers, leaders, finance analysts, finance leaders. I am, I'm just standing here in gratitude that I've spent my career amidst just some brilliant and wonderful and beautiful people. The second part, I'll pivot to the second part of the career. That's probably been most of the last 15 years, and that's been spent in intentional leadership roles. That's been spent building, leading, doing all kinds of multi-shore, offshore, nearshore, onshore team development, team leadership, building, proving, monetizing, productizing services, different products, different go-to-market plans. And I've been fortunate to do all of those things really in two different capacities. Greenfield, where, kind of net new things, new idea, new plan, new market, new customers, but then also turnaround capacities too, where we had a model or we had a function in place and it could have done with some improvement. So I've seen both ends. And there's also things that I've done that then get improved upon too. So I'm not trying to say that I come in and do things better, because lots of my stuff got continually refactored and improved too. But more recently, very recently, I've had the opportunity to scout and close and derive ROI from M&A activity. I've had the opportunity to be involved in a lot of our strategic efforts across this, multi-billion, $16 billion all-in global organization. And I think all of that really culminates in where my career has gone in the role that I'm doing now. And that's really serving as the leader and the steward of our consulting and global system integrator business at TEKsystems. And that's the current assignment. We use the word assignment here at TEKsystems to describe the roles and jobs and functions that we support and serve. But the current assignment has been my most favorite assignment. It's been an incredible assignment, is really being there to shepherd what we do over and above what a lot of you know us as, a pure play talent organization early on. And for those of you familiar with that genealogy, for years we were that pure play talent, pure play IT staffing organization. And we've evolved. We've evolved into this global system integrator, this global high-tech consulting organization to our customers and partner to our customers. And that evolution really kind of behind the scenes for many years was part of the mission of so many of us here at TEKsystems, to have that transformation, have that evolution really take root. And we got a lot of partners here at HITEC and a lot of customers here at HITEC that have been the beneficiaries, I would say humbly, of some of that transformation. And really today, just inside of that GSI, that Global System Integrator organization, it's now a multi-billion-dollar org, and we're recognized as a premier and elite partner to a lot of the biggest disruptors in the industry today. And you guys know who you are. We got AWS. I got some swag here, Google Cloud, Red Hat, Snowflake, Microsoft. You know who you are. And this is not an advertisement, I promise, gang, for TEKsystems or Tech Global Services. We'll save that, Susana, for like a summit or something. But no, it's but that transformation of the organization is something that I've been so blessed to play little parts of over the years. And because that word transformation right now in our industry is getting a lot of play. So that's been our own transformation. But to wrap up my part of the introduction here, this career path that I've been on is really an expression for what had been modeled to me as a young person. I grew up watching my father, my abuelita, my abuelo, my uncles, my aunties, all working very hard as exiles. I grew up watching them struggle, sacrifice, lots of austerity. The family came here as refugees to this country, and the goal was to reconstitute the family after having to flee Cuba, after having to flee with nothing, no capital, no command of the language, no command of the culture, just nothing. But they all really strive to raise the tide for their family and their community, and I'm a beneficiary of that now. So that the career path that I just talked about really is just an expression of what I saw modeled for me, and that sort of origin story, everybody, that's not rare. That's not rare. That's not unique. That is so real for the communities that we represent here at HITEC in this familia. You know, most of us have the same or very similar immigrant origin story on the call. So that I count myself as very humbled and very blessed that I'm part of this tapestry of a superpower story that we'll talk about here at HITEC. But I could say that apart from my faith, apart from my family, of course, that immigrant mindset and that immigrant programming, if you will, that was drilled into me as a young person, that's been like an invisible hand in my life, really driving me my entire life, driving so many of us certainly on this call. And you know, I try to use metaphors sometimes to explain things. But for those of us who are like technophile geeks, and there's a lot of us techie geeks on the on the call here. Kelly's laughing. Kelly, I think you might be one. But that that invisible force, that driving hand, it's like embedded programming. It's really like firmware, you know, the firmware that mysteriously makes the machine work. So for me, I look at it, that's my immigrant firmware that controls my human computer. You know, that's what that superpower is to me, that I saw modeled. um but if you do know Cubans, or if you are Cuban, or you're related to Cubans, whether they emigrated recently, whether they're first generation, second generation, they commonly talk about what their families left behind in Cuba. And they usually talk about this like in a really tragic way, right? You know, there's a lot of melancholy, a lot of sadness, you know, leaving behind their beautiful country, leaving behind their people, their culture. Even though more recently, you know, the social and economic plight in the country has people like leaving very happily. You know, historically and on the balance, I think about something my abuelita used to say. She used to describe that sense of loss and that sense of struggle by Cubans. And by the way, it's not just by Cubans. You know, we can look at every community across Latino America in the same way. Um, but she used to describe that sense as like a sombra, a shadow, and that the sombra like hangs over generations and hangs over many families who end up in North America. And you know, I know I'm speaking for a lot of us here. We contend with the imagery, we contend with the loss. And although that shadow, although that sombra feels like a curse sometimes, or a point of sorrow for so many, again, that imagery, loss, you know, that having to reconstitute families and loved ones through all of that, I would argue that instead of being a curse, instead of being something that's tragic, I would argue that sombra and that immigrant experience, that is the superpower, everybody. That is so much about what makes us special and what makes this group powerful. But I'll just ask you to earmark that little sombra is a superpower right now, you know, and we'll bring that up more here in a second. But for now, I will pivot real quick to just the state of the industry real quick here. You know, growth is happening across IT, across our sector. There's no doubt. We all see it. But it is certainly a funky time right now. It's a strange time. The economy has generally weakened. We see it and we read the headlines every day. I would not presume to educate anybody on this call at all here on the challenges. We're all living it and seeing it every day. But Gartner and IDC usually do a pretty decent job of giving us projections that kind of, you know, speak to where we're headed. And they're still projecting 4 to 5% growth roughly across the tech sector. And we see things like device sales falling, you know, there's material parts of the workflow and the supply chain that are falling, but, you know, software is doing great. Cloud continues to grow. Anything that falls under the umbrella of digital transformation, these are great growth venues for all of us here on the line today. Um, and the reason that those things are growing, we all know, because you can draw the most direct line between a lot of those, let's just say, you know, transformation oriented topics. You can draw the most direct line from those investments to increasing revenue or reducing costs or enhancing CX, customer experience. That's like the holy grail of IT right now, right? Like either increase customer experience, reduce costs, or increase revenue. It's, you know, one of those three things or a combination of thereof. And while that all sounds great to all of us, we're probably feeling the optimization word come up in the midst. So yeah, there's growth, but I mean, goodness, that word optimization, that's like the word du jour of 2023, or maybe cost reduction. We hear that phrase too. Those are like also the bells of the ball right now. Every day there's more publicized layoffs. I just looked at Meta's latest news, and we're seeing budget cuts, we're hearing about it, we're reading about it. We also see executives talk about things like durable savings and material savings. And I saw a good one last week, molecular savings. That was, if anybody heard that, molecular savings, which is great. I think it was in reference to items like pens and staplers and things of that nature. But anyway, what does that mean to us? What does this almost cognitive dissonance mean, where we've got growth, we've got optimism, but all in the face of uncertainty and in the face of optimization? To this group, especially at HITEC, that means that the pressure mounts, right? The pressure increases on all of us here to drive way more quantifiable value through the people, through the systems, through the teams that we're responsible for leading. The pressure to protect those people, the pressure to sustain the companies that we work for and serve, that's the name of the game right now for all of us. And we know that. Again, I'm not giving anybody an education on something you don't already know about. I'm just trying to bring some words to it here. And if we can, in the face of protecting and sustaining, with this dissonance going on, and if we can at the same time, like, innovate into the next wave of something neat, like what OpenAI is doing, and we're seeing Bard with Google now, we're seeing real enterprise use cases for LLMs, at scale, really, really cool, really awesome. So if we can do that as an industry while battening down the hatches and getting more efficient, then it's beautiful. But still, the pressure exists, especially for leaders. And I would contend for Latino leaders, it's acute right now. We'll talk about that more in a second. And we could probably talk all day long during this sort of turbulence in the economy and in our sector. We could talk about how different frameworks, or how they work and how they can benefit us, or like a general consciousness like DevOps, for example, is built for times like this. That really leads me to some of the best practices and the things that I see that are driving value, and they're getting companies and teams through this time in more of a strive and less of a struggle kind of capacity. But some of the best efforts I see right now at managing this incongruity of growth with lots of cost reduction and compression, they're very DevOps-y in nature, if I could. They're very almost scaled agile, SAFe, if anybody follows SAFe framework out there. They really hearken to some of these points of consciousness, just prioritizing IT efforts according to real monetized business value. Emphasis on the word monetize there. Reducing waste in backlogs and in pipeline right now. I mean, we all know it. We've got a wish list of items that kind of create these bloated backlogs, and everything's a priority, but not now. They're not in this moment. Grooming project plans according only to those value streams that are, again, going to go back to driving revenue, reducing costs, improving CX, and really having tight lines between those priorities. Those at our customers, at our partners, the environments that we touch, the best leaders that I see right now are keeping it simple on those areas, on those three areas. And again, common stuff for this audience here. This is common stuff, but we still see a number of technology leaders and executives who are still conferring power upon themselves or their group through the size of the organization, through the size of their head count, the scope of the priority list. That's also kind of incongruous with where we're at. There's still kind of that old waterfall mentality in some organizations where, leaders still think that prestige comes with, size and scope. And that's not serving organizations well in general terms right now. And I had the chance to hear, for anybody that works at VMware or works with VMware, their CTO, had the chance to hear him recently, Jason Conyard. He explained this dynamic really well. He said that in IT and the world of technology, we're really good. All of us are really, really good at adding things to priority lists, to org charts, to strategic initiatives. We're really good at adding things, but we're really bad at taking things away and pruning things and making things smaller. And it's true. Generally, it's
Nonprofit
true.
too, let me tell you.
It's yeah, it's and especially coming out of 3 years of a pandemic where hey, money was cheap, it was available, it was accessible. All of us had brilliant ideas, and we had the capital to try to breathe life into them. But especially in IT, we're so rife with creative, super smart, I mean, just incredible folks. That's the number one superpower, I would say, inside of our sector, our industry. But being bad at taking things away and prioritizing according to really just brute force business objectives is certainly what we need to be sobered to, for the sake of our people, for the sake of our business. So that's just some observations here for what it's worth. And in terms of leadership, we can go away from really almost like brute force business to like leadership topics. The most admired leaders that I see right now, IT and business, the most admired leaders that I see at the moment, they've got these really good constructive feedback loops set up. So again, harkening back to DevOps principles and scaled agile principles, but still, it's some of them don't even know what DevOps means, but just a real mechanism for circulating feedback, both at organizations and with their customers. And it's not just set up for the sake of, having like a 1-800 hotline or a venting file or anything. No, 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 no. Like constructive feedback loops that are dignified, that are gleaned, where you do separate good feedback from not good feedback, because not all feedback is good feedback, but really being a leader who can scrutinize what you have to act on quickly and nimbly, listening to your customers, listening to your people, and then dispensing of the stuff that may just bring some emotional overhead to the organization. That some of the best leaders really have these mechanisms throughout their organization set up right now. I love that. And during the pandemic, this kind of starts to filter back into the superpower thread here for a second. But during the pandemic, feedback was a big thing, and we saw as an industry where we let some of our most inexperienced entrants to the industry, newest IT professionals, or even a lot of times some of our most underperforming professionals or teams, we kind of allowed these groups to like dictate big parts of the culture, big parts of the IT culture overall, big parts of the culture inside of individual organizations. And it sounds okay. We always want a diverse, fresh perspective. We want to evolve. But what we saw kind of happen in conjunction with this kind of open arm to all feedback and culture kind of being dictated by virtue of a lot of feedback is that a lot of folks in our space in technology didn't really want to be led or challenged with high performance expectations. So wanted to have a huge voice, but really didn't want to take any feedback back. There was it was kind of a one-way door, if we could use some Amazon language for a second, a one-way door instead of a two-way door. And this for me kind of gets highlighted when we think of some of the trends that came to bear over the last 3 years. What do we have? The Great Resignation, a focus on lots of side hustles that usually are at odds with your primary employer, right? We saw a lot of moonlighting activity. We still see it right now, even amidst lots of layoffs, unfortunately, but a lot of moonlighting that starts to steal energy from your primary career path. There's also quiet quitting, lots of quiet quitting in the news, quiet quitting on teams. Lots of weird perk demands, like demands for perks. Even when the economy started to have weird turbulence, we saw demands for perks and pay and compensation demands that were not always rooted in reality. And the latest, I like this latest one. Anybody heard of bare minimum Mondays? That's another little. That's one of the coolest ones that I've heard. Is basically you just show up on Monday and mail it in, and it's been happening in some of these environments that went from either virtual or hybrid directly to on-prem back again in terms of like, way of working. And just some folks are like, hey, if my employer is going to make me come back to work, I'm going to do bare minimum on Monday. So anyways, I'm not trying to complain at trends, gang. But can you imagine, especially our community here at HITEC, can you imagine if your parents or your grandparents asked you, oye, ¿cómo te va en el trabajo? Hey, how's it going at work? And you told them, hey, mommy, tú sabes, I'm quiet quitting. I'm going to do bare minimum Mondays, mommy. Oye, papi, olvídate, bare minimum Mondays for me. Can you imagine us telling our parents and grandparents this kind of thing that has been rife across our industry that a lot of us frankly accepted over the last couple of years? Is nah. I promise you, this is not why our families sacrifice to make better lives for us in the U.S. This is not why a lot of us here at HITEC, well, not me because I was born here, but a lot of HITEC was not born here. You're the one that's the pioneer. You're the one that is constituting your family. You're the one having to learn new language and new customs. And can you imagine yourself being good with these trends that have been rife across our sector, across our industry? It's like, man, it's like we need a little wake up call, do a little pinch here on the arm. It's like, what are we allowing? So, especially in the Latino community here, like I see a risk of family legacies being diminished with some of these trends that are at odds with why all of us are even here in North America right now. It's the opposite of the immigrant superpower that's going on right now. It's the opposite of perseverance, the opposite of the ganas, the hard work that our parents had to establish themselves by, our grandparents, or that is currently happening right now. Like, it's the opposite of those things. And it's as if many of our youngest IT workers, especially in our community, it's like they wanted to be coddled. And I say that carefully because I don't want to be, some viejito here, talking about what the young people are doing now. But it is almost as if there was another invisible hand at odds with the immigrant superpower. And it was one of like, hey, I want to be coddled. I want high return, but I want little to do in terms of the input. And instead of performing to high standards, I can't really say that I blame our youngest workers, because that's what's being modeled for them now. I look instead to the leadership of our next generation of IT workers. It's like, what are you permitting? What are you tolerating? And that's us. That's most of us on the call. And anybody who's a mentor in EEP, I'm definitely talking to you, which, hey, I'm guilty. I am fortunate to serve in that capacity for EEP also. But that's the dynamic that's at play here. And I just, would ask, have we stopped leading? Have we stopped intentionally developing our newest people and our youngest workers? Have we stopped pushing them? Have we stopped holding sometimes the most vulnerable mindsets that we've got on our teams? Have we stopped holding them accountable to their role in achieving a sustainable career? And these are rhetoric questions. Of course, nobody has to answer. I haven't even looked at the comment. I should probably pull chat up here and look at the comments. But rhetoric questions, everybody. Yes, that there is this macroeconomic imbalance in our industry because we still have the demand for skilled technology workers and professionals that's huge. And that has fed some of the challenges, but this reversal of performance culture that we've seen over the last 3 years creep up in IT, that feels like a real big reason why we're seeing layoffs right now. It's not just a budget thing. We're seeing right after earnings reports, that's usually when the news comes up. If you didn't listen to the call, it's usually when the news comes up that, hey, here are these optimization measures, here are these layoffs, here are these RIFs, reduction in forces that any company is doing. And that there's usually a budget to blame, or there's a headwind in terms of top line revenue to blame. But I would contend that it's not just financial. Like, we're seeing these layoffs now also as a performance reset and a culture reset in our industry, because we tolerated a lot of stuff that started to affect companies. And it's what we allowed to manifest, what we allowed really, and what we permitted to manifest during the pandemic. So anyways, I would just ask you, like, just like I requested to earmark the sombra and the superpower dynamic, please make note of this performance and culture dynamic too, and just earmark that one for me, because really what our youngest and next generation of the Latino community needs from us right now is strong leadership. So just earmark that, please. And I will pivot quickly also to DE&I and prioritizing our diversity, our equity, and our inclusion priorities and efforts at any given company right now. You know, I'm blessed that I'm joined here today by Franklin Reed, who is our executive for all of our DE&I programs. We've got Deanna Macbeth here, who's also leading that for our services organization. But this is part of our culture at TEKsystems, and what we're seeing now is that with all of the focus on optimization and all the focus on cost reduction and all the focus on performance, and we're seeing it almost like a pendulum, right? Everybody, it was kind of weak during the pandemic, and now, woo, it's swinging hard the other way. And we see it with the layoffs and the budgets and all of these things being impacted right now. But I would just ask our team here at HITEC to be real careful that we do not allow our own organization's inclusion efforts to get deflighted or deprioritized in this moment. Because let's be real honest here for a second, everybody. That's right, Susanita, dale. But let's be real honest with one another. Real intentional DE&I and inclusion efforts in organizations are what's enabled access for so many of us in HITEC. So I see some alligator arms across the industry right now. There have been beneficiaries of inclusion that when it comes time to make budget decisions, they're like, now, we'll put that off till 2024. For us at HITEC, your diversity and inclusion efforts, that's push up and pull up in action. Our mantra, push up and pull up, that's push up and pull up in action. It's what makes it real. And as a group, this is pre-baked into our consciousness. No estamos aquí para los jueguitos, no solo para divertirnos. We're not here just to have fun. Oh wait, did my mic go out? Te veo, Joe. No, Joe está aquí bailando. Dale. But I thought maybe my mic went out. But no, we're here because this is serious business. Everybody, that's our families are here because this is serious, and we came here to constitute the future for the next generation. And DE&I in the workplace, that is one of the clearest expressions of that purpose for our community. It really is. And nobody here needs business justification on why DE&I is critical to our familia here, to the Latino community by and large. Nobody needs to justify. We know the statistics. Latinos in the U.S. right now, Canada, I think North America, we got other stats, but in the U.S., fastest growing economic demographic. When we look globally right now, I think, what is it? We're like the 5th or 4th biggest globally in terms of economic buying power. And we're now eclipsing like India and the UK. It's crazy what this group is contributing to. Just in the United States alone for a second, we make up nearly 20% of the total population, but we occupy 8% of STEM roles in the US. And I say that also carefully because that 12% delta that we have between representation, just on representation alone, but representation in our industry and population in our country, that sparks a lot of anger and it sparks feelings. I'll try to park my own for a second and really just look at it as opportunity. That 12% delta is huge opportunity for our community here, huge opportunity for HITEC. And really, when you look at diversity and inclusion on purpose, like that helps maximize the opportunity that lives inside of that delta, that 12%. And we as leaders, we enable that opportunity, certainly through the investments that we need to keep prioritized right now. And we can look at some investments specifically like the early talent incubation. Here at HITEC, we've got the foundation, certainly, that is a huge enabler of that. We've got the work with Cristo Rey all over the country. Huge enabler for that, early access, early talent access. At TEKsystems, I got to talk about my team here, Franklin and Indiana. We're making investments even now with beautiful partners like Perscolas and creating IT futures, where we are reaching into communities that otherwise they don't know how to get into STEM, and we're creating the job path after education and after boot camps and after rising talent curriculum, but really having job access, after the education really happens. So, and beyond those formal investments for us, because that all dignifies inclusion priorities, right? That all, these investments and these partnerships, that dignifies DE&I. But individually, I could ask more rhetoric questions here of those of us that have been in high tech for a while. Who specifically are we sponsoring inside of our organizations? Who specifically are we mentoring? Who do we have accountable, weekly, bi-weekly, just career conversations with, whose interest are we acting upon in the boardroom or when they're not in the room? Who are we really trying to benefit on purpose and build up and push up and pull up on purpose? Again, more rhetoric questions, but you know where I'm going here. And it's not just inside of your team, of your company, of your organization, but EEP. There's not a better platform for you to kind of drink your own champagne outside the four walls of your organization than through the emerging executive program. So to keep those flywheels going for that intentional, diverse tilt, that intentional and equitable and inclusive tilt inside of organizations that's happening naturally through our community, we got to be vigilant on the things that we talked about before, the creating direct value streams between business objectives and monetized outcomes, managing budget tight, removing waste in pipelines and backlogs, like all of those things in the day job really form a hedge and form a protective sheath around your inclusive priorities, around your equity priorities, around your diversity priorities inside an organization. So the better we are at the day jobs, everybody, the more of that hedge exists and the more growth exists and the more investment exists. We all know this. But we do see right now that with all the turbulence in the market and people start looking at line items, and diversity investment is up for grabs sometimes. So the better we are at the day job, the more we protect DE&I. Just saying. Anyhow, we could talk about that for days, but I'm going to start to close up here by really going back to those ideas that I asked you to earmark. So the idea of the sombra, the immigrant superpower, that performance mindset, all of those things that I asked you to park mentally. And not to over spiritualize the dynamic, but the sombra, the shadow of loss, of sacrifice, the shadow of struggle. For many of our families, that is the blessing. That is a blessing. It's oftentimes a blessing in disguise, but it's a blessing. That shadow is the real superpower. Without contending with the loss, without contending with having to sacrifice and work and learn and be resilient, without having to set up that next generation in a way more intentional way where failure is not an option. Failure was not an option for my parents, thank God. It was not an option for them. Was not an option for my grandparents. But because of all that, the economic strength and that like GDP contribution that I talked about that our community represents, that wouldn't be happening right now. All of that growth through the Latino community and representation in this country, that wouldn't exist. And although we have countless individual examples, we are blessed with so many leaders, both in and outside of high tech, as a part of the extended familia here. So many leaders in business, so many leaders in government, in the arts, where we've got prominent Latinos building a better future for all of us here in the United States. I would say, at least in the Cuban community, we would like to say that without that Latino superpower, the Cubans, we like to say that there'd be no company called Amazon right now. That company was founded by a guy who was raised by a Cuban immigrant. All right. This Cuban immigrant modeled hard work. This guy was in exile. He modeled sacrifice. He modeled what it was to not fail. He embodied what it meant to to strive. So if you hear what I'm saying, us Cubans are taking credit for Jeff Bezos and we're taking credit for Amazon. I'm just saying. All right. And Jeff, hey, you're laughing. He's even got the right haircut. Like, so I'm just Cubans. We're putting our stamp on Jeff Bezos. He's ours now. He belongs to us. But I'm sorry. I'm just trying to keep everybody engaged. Roy, I see you drifting, Roy. I'm just trying to make sure you're listening, sister. Let's go. Eso, Joe. But seriously, think about our families, having to walk through the doors of this new country, having to become a sponge, learn a new language, learn new customs, learn norms, being perpetually in a foreign place, but really being able as a result to exert more dynamism, just to be more dynamic as a result, being able to think differently, being able to have a far more diverse perspective, being able to adapt to different personalities, different cultures in life and in career. I'm biased, but I'd say that all of that is a superpower, everybody. All of that is indeed what this Latino community of ours represents, what that immigrant experience has represented. So, before I was just talking to a couple of friends the other day. Before I wrap up, I have some very dear Venezolano friends who I love. And, hey, JC, if you're listening to the replay, like we got so many dear Venezolanos here in our HITEC familia too. And our Venezolano community has been dealing with that sombra. They've been dealing with the struggle big time. And a lot of, that's right, Joe.
Venezolano.
Eso mismo, chico. But since a lot of our Venezolano part of the Latino community here has not been established quite as long as some of the rest of us, Cubans, Mexicans, like some of Puerto Ricans, we've been here a little bit longer. I would just like to encourage, anybody, either recently coming from Venezuela or having family come recently from Venezuela. Listen, although the arrival to the U.S. is certainly like unplanned for a lot, and you're being ripped away from a beautiful culture and a beautiful country, I would just say hang in there, and God bless you, because you're now writing that destiny for your children. You're now writing, that sombra into life for your children and your children's children. Many of them who aren't even a twinkle in your eye yet, I'm sure. But that superpower that you're accumulating right now, that's going to be a blessing to them for future generations. So I was talking to a couple of friends this weekend, and it just struck me. It's like, wow, my Venezolano brothers and sisters are feeling what a lot of the rest of us felt like a generation ago. But in closing here, I'll just close up and we'll go quickly. What time do we have here? Estoy aquí hablando como loco. Sorry, Susana.
No, we have some questions in the queue that I've seen, and
Vamos.
so yeah, you can wrap. Pero I will get. I know Angela had to drop, but she did leave us a question, I believe. Pero I'll look for the question as you do your.
Yeah, I would wrap quickly by putting that ownership back on us as a community and as a familia here at HITEC. Like, we're used to the tough times. Our families are used to tough times. We can play an outsized role in these tough times for the industry, for the country. Again, not to over spiritualize the dynamic here, blow it out of proportion, but that hard work that kind of got lost in the land, that perseverance that kind of got lost in the last 3 years, that's what's been modeled of us or demanded of us. And the next generation needs a little reminder of that. And there's not a better group of leaders than what's represented here at HITEC that I can humbly and hopefully somewhat unbiasedly think there's not a better group of leaders that can manifest change in light of the struggles right now in the country and in the economy. So that's what I got, Susana.
No, see, and just to go back to like my original comments, we are here to help change the narrative and change the conversation, shine the spotlight on leaders as you, because beyond where you are, you're definitely a role model on how to get to those highest levels. So going to Angela's question.
Okay.
Ricardo, I love your story. I can relate to your journey, not only because I live in Miami, but also an immigrant story. Very impressed with your accomplishments, and I appreciate your family story, so humbling with pride. Since I need to disconnect early, I promise to watch the recording. You shared how you grew in the company, held about 12 roles in 25 years. So clearly you have adopted to changing times and circumstances. What advice would you give to emerging professionals as they start their careers, or experienced professionals who are forced to pivot given the impact of the economy? Mil gracias for your input, Angela.
Well, thank you, Angela. When you're listening to the, yeah, thank you for the thoughtful response there. Emerging, and that's why I'm just so careful when I start talking about a different generation, because I know what it was like to hear my abuelo, my father, my tios like talk about, you guys don't work as hard. I don't want to be that guy, but I probably sounded like that guy. But the young people, I'm just waiting for Franklin to agree with that sentiment. But in chat here, but the young people that I see right now, Angela, that are striving and persevering and that are setting themselves apart, across all these like new hire cohorts, especially right now that we get to work with. And it's going to sound like platitudes, but being valuable from day one, volunteering for all the work, volunteering for all the projects, really putting in hours, not FaceTime hours, putting in the hours, being a sponge with everything that you can learn and do, and do not, whatever you do not fall prey into this invisible hand of the entitlement mindset right now. It's so easy to fall into it. It's so easy to be a soft shoulder for somebody who's discontented, or somebody who's got performance gaps. And I would say, instead of endorsing and conforming to that, try to help, try to sharpen. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another, and we got to be iron with one another. That's how we get more capable in these organizations. But I would also say, Angela, you're going to meet people, if you've not met already, that probably need a mindset reset for themselves. Be part of that reset. Every company is a meritocracy. We forget that sometimes. Every organization, even not-for-profit that I've seen, Kelly, there's a certain vibe of meritocracy that we're all trying to achieve. We're all trying to output. We're all trying to float the boats around us by what we do and what we contribute. And finding out really quickly what you can do to float the rest of your community there in an earnest way. I would love every new young person having to do that pivot that you talk about, Nige. I would love every person to kind of come in thinking and trying to behave that way.
Mil gracias. And I want to open it up to the participants for any questions that they might have. As I know that you've left us with many different little golden nuggets and to share. And even if you just want to come off mic and share what you think your superpower is, we open the floor to your questions. Hola, Dina Jones. Fannie Mae in the house. Hola.
Hi, Ricardo. So good to see you.
Long time no see, Dina. How you been?
I know this was amazing. Thank you so much. I have to thank Susie about Superpower, but my question for you, Ricardo, is you talked a lot about making diversity, equity, inclusion a priority and linking it to business objectives. Absolutely. I was hoping you could give some examples of how you do that within your organization as a leader, executive sponsorship. So can you give examples of how you do that, your peers do that within TEKsystems?
Oh, yeah. So there's a couple of things come immediately to mind. And this is stuff that doesn't require more funding or capital. It requires intentional leadership. But Franklin, who's our D&I leader, who's on the call right now, he really years ago got us introduced to the really bad outcomes from unconscious bias. And every year we've got different programs of I don't want to use the word training to just kind of categorize or commoditize what happens here, but every year we've got different points of training around unconscious bias for all of our leaders. And some need tune-ups and some do really great. And then we want them to evangelize, but really looking at the subtle little cues and the subtle little nuances that act as blockers or that act as barriers or that act as again points of erosion to that inclusive culture that we're trying to continue to grow and sustain. And a lot of times we can take that and drill down one point, Dina, into look at their leadership group. So if we look at a leader and we're concerned that there might be some unconscious bias, and oftentimes the leaders are in privilege groups or the privileged group, period. And it's like, hey, all of their next generation, their high potential leaders, their second in charge, whatever, they come from the same group. And it's like, let's just see if there's something to it. So we start to look at how diverse and how inclusive those the people pipelines get. And if those leaders aren't intentionally, part of the privilege group that we're seeing some unconscious bias in, if they're not intentionally reaching out and developing, mentoring, or sponsoring people that look different than them, that came from a different place than them, that are on a different part of the socioeconomic strata than they are, then the conversation changes. Now, fortunately, we've been, Franklin has had us doing this a long time and it's natural, but I can rewind the tape, 5-6 years where there were leaders that really couldn't lead anymore. Not a lot, but there were certainly some leaders that couldn't lead anymore because of an inability to develop, to mentor, to sponsor anybody that didn't come from the same fraternity or play the same sport or whatever. So that's, and again, this doesn't cost anything, Dina. It's just, accountability and intentionality. I could go on and on, but that's on my heart. That is on my heart. It's been on my heart for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dina, for the question, and Ricardo, for the transparency in the remarks. We're almost about time, so why don't we do this? Let's just do a round, a rapid fire. No? Everybody get off mic. Get ready. Let's go with your superpower. And Joe, porque te veo ahí, porque I see you super excited. And also because I gave a forewarning that I was going to ask this at the end. I'd love to hear from you, Joe, first. What do you think your superpower is? Let's just start a little bit of a conversation here with our last couple of minutes.
Well, thank you, Susana. Muchas gracias, Ricardo. Outstanding speech. I would like to say my superpower is aligning diversity, diverse people, diverse voices into tech. Been doing this for several years, and certainly continue to do that in our company, and we're glad to be part of the team, and glad to be part of the family. So muchas gracias, Susana, muchas gracias, Ricardo, y ese es mi superpower, conectando la familia.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll piggyback on that, and I'll just say that my superpower, being Latina Hispana, is warmth. It's part of what I bring to our organization. It's a connection point. And eso vino de la cocina de mi abuelita, donde we would make tortillas. And I mean, yo desmenucé so much chicken in my life, I don't ever need to do that again. But that also helps with the warmth. So anybody else who would like to share, we open the mic. Please feel free to give us yours.
So I will go, I would say, elevating others. I absolutely love, shining the spotlight on all of the great things that other people are doing. In my work at the HITEC Foundation, that is students. And so from high school, undergraduate, graduate, PhD students, they're remarkable individuals that we're working with. And it's my passion and my superpower to shine the light on them and showcase all that they do.
And you do it super well, Kelly. We are blessed to have you with us. Anybody else before we close out? Okay, we have a bunch of shy people here, which I've never seen in my lifetime. We thank you all for participating. We thank you for this time. Thank you for building into yourselves by learning from others. Thank you for the connection points that we all share. Please, please, please remember to register for the HITEC Summit. Spring Summit hosted by Wells Fargo in San Francisco. We are getting together all again. Franklin, I'm super happy to have you on this call. Ricardo, in closing, I just want to say mil gracias. The insights of your leadership and your journey that you have shared with us, the ripple effect that you have is probably beyond anything that you'll ever be able to fully comprehend or know, but we are all the better for it. Thank you.
No, gracias, Susana. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, familia.
Ricardo,
Y nos
Susana,
vemos la
familia.
próxima.
Nos vemos. Gracias, familia.
Abrazos,
Gracias, familia.
abrazos
Un
y
abrazo.
besos.
Cuídense, fuerza.
Eso. Eso. Thank you.